New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
And hello again, dear ones. Rev Briz with you here.
Rev Z over here.
And today is New Thought Today, Tuesdays at 2 here on the New Thought Media Network. And I'll tell you, we've got a great show for you lined up today, folks. Now, those that have been watching or maybe catching up on the archives, we've been discussing the Global Heart Vision as presented by the Centers for Spiritual Living. And we've been discussing these principles and all the different aspects of it. Now, over the last few weeks, today is a recap day. Let me tell you that, because we've got an amazing guest with us, one of the, in my opinion, luminaries of New Thought, and so many other things as well. The great and right and Reverend Dr. David Alexander is with us today. Good afternoon, sir. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Hey, everybody. How you doing?
It's a fabulous day here in Colorado. Thanks for being with us.
Absolutely. My great joy.
Okay, so quick recap today, folks. What we're going to do is Dr. David is going to share with us on 3 different aspects of the global vision. I just want to share with you those 3 that we're going to talk about today, and then we'll jump into them in a little more detail. Number 1, we envision a world where personal responsibility joins with social conscience in every area of the political, corporate, academic, and social sectors, providing sustainable structures to further the emerging global consciousness. Envisioning a world where each and every person has enough food, a home, and a sense of belonging, a world of peace and harmony, enfranchisement and justice. And we envision a world in which resources are valued, cared for, and grown, and where there is generous and continuous sharing of those resources. Again, if you've been watching over the last 3 weeks, Z and I have taken each one of those and filled up a full hour. How about it, Z?
Yep. You know, I think this is a great time. I'm so excited that Dr. David is with us, because these 3 points, if you will, encapsulate, I think, what we should be envisioning in the future going into 2021 and beyond, in terms of how we come together as a community, as a people, as a planet, to set up this integral, not necessarily, I mean, integral would take care of all that other stuff we're talking about, because they'll know there's some synergy between the different parts, and they won't be looked at as individuals. But I think this is just perfect. I can't wait to hear Reverend David's boom, or if you will, on future of life, if you will.
Dr. David, as the bringer of the boom, why don't we give you a chance to chime in here a little bit?
Well, I'm delighted to be here. Always happy to discuss, global consciousness and spirituality, and as it relates to our global vision. I've said for a long time about our global vision and about our mission and vision, being a world that works for everyone. And that mission of providing personal and collective tools for spiritual awakening, that those things, when we voted on them, however long, 8, 9, 10 years ago now, I say this often. I don't think the majority of people, even though the vote was 99% for one of the things, and I think 97% or 98% for the bylaws, I don't think people really knew what they were voting for. And I say that because that vision and that mission is inherently social, and it's inherently justice oriented by the very nature of how it's defined, right? The vision of creating a world that works for everyone immediately takes you out of yourself. And that is a big leap for a movement that, if I dare say in this moment, has been so self-centered for so long, right? And all of a sudden, boom, overnight, we've got a mission that is inherently not localized in the self. It's localized in the world. That is a huge paradigm shift. And then providing the tools for that awakening suggests action, right? For personal empowerment, not just personal empowerment, but collective, to make the world a better place, not just to make my life better. So these statements are, and the global vision goes right along with that. The global vision is the meat on the bones. So the vision and mission are kind of the bones or the structure, and then the meat on the bones is the global vision. And the global vision is a lot like it's a guiding document, and it's very much like the founding documents of this country. It's something that should always push us forward and inspire us to stretch into it. And we should always find some place of sort of, some rub with it, in that,
right,
that it's challenging us because we're not quite there yet. That's exactly what it should do. So I really love this document, and I love the chance to talk about it today.
Yeah. Let's give everybody a quick reminder that, as Dr. David's referring, the mission, purpose, and vision of Centers for Spiritual Living. Our mission is to provide spiritual tools for personal and global transformation. Our purpose is to awaken humanity to its spiritual magnificence, and our vision is a world that works for everyone. Thank you for that.
Yeah, and as I said in the beginning, that was that explosion. The way he just explained that so succinctly and so clear, that I think no matter who you are or where you are on any kind of scale, spectrum, whatever you want to call yourself in terms of where you are, there is a place in that for you to join in and say, let's make this happen.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Exactly. Okay, so let's dig in a little more to the specifics. What we call statement number 5 on the list: we envision a world where personal responsibility joins with social conscience in every area of the political, corporate, academic, and social sectors, providing sustainable structures to further the emerging global consciousness. And we talk about meat on the bones. This is, for me, the one that's like, man, this is where the rubber hits the road. This is the everything and the all of these statements. And again, we'd love to get your perspective on it.
Yeah, well, this one's it, man. This is the boom right here. This is the emerald, right? Pow, bam.
Definitely.
I mean, let's just take a look at, we envision a world where, let's break these down. Personal responsibility joins with social conscience. Personal responsibility and social conscience joining together. And this is fairly new territory for our movement, the new thought, but also more specifically the Centers for Spiritual Living movement, where I would say historically we have been focused on the personal responsibility part, right? We teach people how to be mindful of your own consciousness, how your thoughts, attitudes, and beliefs affect your own life. And if you want those things to get better, you want your relationships, your finances, your job, your whatever get better, then first be mindful of your own self-talk, examine critically that self-talk to figure out where the hidden beliefs are, and then go to work on those hidden beliefs to create a more positive vision and outlook. That's all very, what led to the New Thought movement really led to the self-help movement, right? And that all of that work that's out there on that. affirmations and positive thinking and positive visioning and etc. So that's the personal responsibility. But this statement is saying, hang on, that's just the beginning. Personal responsibility joins with social conscience, right? And so that would be enough. We just end the statement right there. Responsibility joins with social conscience. Okay, that means so ignore the rest right now. That means, okay, I have to be mindful of how my thoughts, attitudes, and beliefs join with or participate in the collective social conscience. Right? How am I contributing to or distracting from the general groupthink or the collective consciousness of the society that I am in? Now, that might be a safe enough statement to say in most of our churches, but then we add in every area, political, academic, corporate, social sectors, and providing sustainable structures for the further emergence of global conscience or consciousness. So now we say, not only do you have to be mindful of how your thinking interacts with the collective consciousness and social consciousness, but in every area of life, in political, corporate, academic, and social sector. Whoa. I mean, we're saying we envision a world where people are hyper vigilant and mindful of how their consciousness contributes to the collective consciousness in the political sphere, in the academic and corporate sphere, in everything else. That's heavy. That's heavy stuff now.
You know, and the interesting thing there is that you know, like you said, when you guys sat down and came up with this, you know, it was there. It was a great statement. How many people bought into it is you know, okay, that's up for questions. But how succinctly that right now in a time where at least in that one statement alone, everything applies. You can't say, okay, I'm gonna do this and drop that, or I'm gonna do 2 but not 3. You got to do it all, and it's so wonderful to see how Spirit works, how God works to make these things that we think are insignificant sometimes. Not that this was insignificant, but you know, there's not a lot of thought given to it, and then at the right place and time, you get the boom.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the framers, the people that were in the room, were very inspired by Spirit and had something pretty big and grand in mind. But I think the people who voted on it, you know, let's just face it, right? Let's just be honest. New Thought people, we're wordsmithy people. We love big flowery words, right? We love it in our prayers. We love it in our affirmations. We love it in our sermons. Our founder would just, you know, if he didn't have the right word, he'd just add NESS to the end of a word and just make it work. You know, it was like, you know, so we were making up words all the time. So we're a wordy people as a faith group, right? So I think people read this and went, "Oh my goodness, that sounds so inspiring and wonderful and yay, absolutely." Without, as you said, taking the time to really go, okay, now what does that mean? What is that going to require of me as a minister, as a practitioner, as a congregant, as somebody who subscribes or ascribes to this faith or teaching? And that's what we've been walking in and unpacking for the last decade, really, and have done so, I think, with some level of controversy or, you know.
Well, and that continues every day. We all, as I'm listening, I'm struck with, we're all on the journey, and everybody's foot slips off the rail once in a while.
Sure.
And we've seen that over the past year, specifically in that political arena, where it is easy. Let's talk about QAnon, right? Where it's very easy for people to follow a path, to slip off of the straight and the narrow, the main highway, if you will. And I've done it. I was in the heat of it one night, created a nice little meme of the current resident of the White House, and threw it out there on social media, totally expecting to get a whole bunch of uproar and rigor, and maybe root out a few racists along the way and that sort of thing. And the post got no play. Post got almost no attention whatsoever. I put it out. I woke up the next morning. It's got like a half a dozen hits and and I'm like, what? But then I remembered, wait a minute, this is antithetical to the vows I've made to myself, to my community, to consciousness, to be in alignment here, to be in that place where no, that wasn't responsible of me to do that, and it was only appropriate to take that down and take it back, as it were.
And real quick, that is the heart of that personal responsibility one, the very first one, where you have to start. You can fool anybody outside, but on the inside, you know what's cooking. And so that's a conversation, a dance, however you want to frame it, that each of us have to take upon ourselves to say, there's more that can be done, and I have a part to play. Let me check myself at the door before we even get started, which is wonderful.
Right. And the next part of personal responsibility is really examining, what our role in the things that are happening is, how, and so that bumps up against all kinds of things, which I'm sure we'll explore here in the rest of our time, but that bumps up against privilege, that bumps up against constructs of racism and whiteness and all kinds of things, political, because it is all consciousness based, everything that's happening, so the easy way out is, the old version of personal responsibility is, well, everybody just kind of mind your own business, mind your own thoughts. And I don't want my minister to talk politically. I don't want to talk about these subjects at church. I want to, just tell me how to make good choices and be a good person and leave the rest alone. And if anybody who knows me out there following, I consider myself part of the charge of ministry for me is to be a prophetic voice. And being a prophetic voice means challenging systems and structures. And it be they political or wherever they may be. They most often are political, the ones that are working against our collective best interest. But it's not because I seek to be a political person. I seek to be embodying this personal responsibility, intersecting and joining with every sector in a way that is awakening humanity. And that means I'm going to be courageous and willing to examine the consciousness behind the thing. Right.
Yes.
The much more comfortable way to go is to just say, well, those people over there think differently than me, and they're responsible for their thoughts. And we over here, we think this way, and we're responsible for our thoughts. Let everybody be personally responsible. And we kind of use it as a crutch as to not engage. Right. And that's not what it means, because that is actually practicing a form of isolation and a form of individualism that undercuts and goes directly against our principle of oneness. If you're really going to be courageous about this teaching, then you're going to radically embrace oneness to the degree that your responsibility engages and joins with the social sector of social conscience of everything else.
And one thing that you just said that highlighted in my mind, oftentimes I think people take oneness to be sameness. And they're not. And what this statement here, we haven't looked at the other two yet, but what this statement also has inherently in it, as David said, we didn't want to get too wordy, I guess, is the fact that there is an integralness to this. And if everything was the same, if everything in your car was the same, it's not going to go anywhere. You need some engine and you need some transmission. And there is a oneness about it, but there's not a sameness about it. And that's how we have to start looking at our lives and our societies, so that we can say, yes, everybody has a part to play. Everybody's valued. If your tire goes flat, you got a problem. I don't care what kind of car you got. And so boom, boom, boom. That's what we're trying to create in a life that works for everyone. I mean, it's kind of simple when we put it in some comparative terms.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. You sparked in me that I keep coming back to this. What is a new thought political movement look like?
Mm.
Mm. That might be a conversation for another time, folks. So,
One that I'm always up for.
but I do want to remind us, this is the New Thought Media Network. This is New Thought Today. I'm here with my co-host, Reverend Elzia Sekou, Rev Z, and our special guest, Reverend Dr. David Alexander of the Center for Spiritual Living Atlanta. We're going to take 45 seconds for a quick station identification and let everybody grab a drink of water. Please stay with us. We'll be right back with more New Thought Today.
New Thought Radio, music from all your favorite New Thought artists. From Jamie Lula, Karen Drucker, Gary Lynn Floyd, Ricky Byers, Daniel Nahmod, Eddie Watkins Jr., and many, many more. 24/7 New Thought Radio. Positively inspiring.
All righty, and we're back. This is New Thought Today. We're here today talking with our special guest, Reverend Dr. David Alexander, and exploring the depth and the breadth of the global vision. And just before our break, we were sort of starting to wander into the next statement in our list. So I'm going to bring that up. We envision a world where each and every person has enough food, a home, and a sense of belonging. A world of peace and harmony, enfranchisement, and justice. Also, again, one of those really good, juicy statements. Like, wow, that is a great vision. And how do we go about that?
Yeah, well, I love this statement because it's building on the one before it. It's like, in case you don't know what that looks like, right? Here you go. Here's some examples, right? And to our vision as well. In case you don't know what does a world that work for everyone look like? Well, it probably looks like everybody having enough food and everybody having a sense of belonging, and then there's some peace and there's some harmony. There's enfranchisement and justice. I love that those two words are in there. Enfranchisement in particular, right? Because it's not a word that we use a lot. We tend to use its opposite, disenfranchisement. But to be enfranchised, to be included in, right? To be embraced, to be a part of, and justice. And for me, what this means is that when we're envisioning this, it says we envision. So this is our prayer work to envision this and to see this happening. But I've said before, the moment that you take responsibility for the idea that you are one with a power greater than yourself, a power that is the infinite intelligence of the universe, the moment that you claim that on the personal level, which we do all the time. I am one. There's a power in the universe greater than I am, and I can use it, right? That this power is in me and operating through my consciousness. The moment you learn, which is pretty early on when you walk into a New Thought church, you don't have to stick around very long to get to that. The moment you claim that as your truth, then you equally and immediately also claim responsibility for every place in the world where oneness, where enfranchisement, enough food, a home, a sense of belonging, where these things are not showing up.
Yes.
You take responsibility, because if you're one with that power, then the only way that power manifests itself as a world that works for everyone is through you. Yes. The moment you claim that power for yourself, you become the point of responsibility through which it moves. Now, that doesn't mean that you personally are responsible for everything. It means that you are a part of the response to everything. And so that is, I think, again, moves us into action, gets us out of the prayerful head. Well, those who don't have and those who are suffering over there, I'll just pray for them. What I call the love and light brigade. Every time there's a tragedy, I'll send love and light. I'll send love and light. If love and light could do it, then the Care Bears would be our logo. But I think we're more than a Care Bear. I think it requires that we do something. I don't send love and light when my son is hungry and tells me that he's hungry. I don't say, "Oh well, I'll send you love and light." I get off the couch and I go make him some food.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And for me, it's the inspired action piece. There will always be an inspiration for us to move if we pay attention, if we're listening, if we're really conscious and aware. I think this is part of what Tracy Brown calls her achieving inclusion model. Right? We have to start by becoming aware, but we also have to be aligned with that awareness. And so many people jump from being aware to being in action. And to take a little bit of time to be in alignment with our awareness of what's come into us before we take that action, then the action becomes inspired.
Yeah.
Recently, another colleague mentioned in passing that she and her community were working on a coat drive for a local teen shelter here in the Denver area. And did we have any coats? I said, I don't know, but why don't I put it on my next door group? And in 3 days, I had 75 coats in my house. And I handed them off to her because that was just the ability I had to respond.
Right.
Something came into my awareness, something came into my consciousness and said, there's teenagers that are going cold that need coats. Well, it took 10 minutes out of my day to put up a post, spent a couple hours in the next few days running around town and collecting those coats. And one of the people was so generous, they left a card with some cash in it to cover my gas money for collecting the coats. But all it was a call to see this, to say, hey, there's more than enough out there.
Absolutely.
Where could I respond?
Yeah.
And that just anchors my statement. Of course, Robert, you've heard this 1,000 times: love, light, and insight, because it is through not just love and light, but it's that insight that causes you to say, oh, there's a spark. Let me get up and get ignited and do something. Because this statement in my mind also kind of brings home and speaks to that again. I'm a religious scientist, so I'm gonna always take it there. It's that symbiotic relationship that we have, the perfect example of this planet that we live on, where it all works together. It's symbiotic. When that thing is working right and it's in alignment, it's just smooth. Transitions are smooth. Resolving issues are smooth. It has everything within itself, because we know the prime thing is life, right? And so the earth itself is always trying to promote life, heal life, create new life, which is what we, as an outgrowth of that, we're not different from the planet. We are a part of it. And when we can model that, amen.
And it becomes what Holmes calls to do joyously and free from morbidity that which we should do in the social state. Right? He says in the Signs of Mind text, he says, we don't have to move the world's going to move anyway. But this realization, he says, should not lessen our social responsibility. It clarifies it. It clarifies it. And the way it clarifies it is, and then he says it allows us to do freely, joyously, and free from morbidity. I love that. Joyously and free. So what Robert did was joyful and free from morbidity.
Yes.
No sense of dread. There was no sense of oh my God, if I don't do this. I always tell people all the time, it's like, you ever try to lose weight or get in shape out of a sense of morbidity, out of a sense of dread, like, going to the gym. Oh, I have to. Oh my gosh. And how long does that last? A few weeks, maybe, right? Eventually all the wind goes out of the sail and you get distracted and you go somewhere else. You do something else. But if you're going to the gym joyously, and out of a love and appreciation for your body and your health and wellness, and there's a whole different mindset and motivation behind that. And it's the
Yep.
same for any kind of area of social justice or creating the world that works for all. We should do those things not because, oh my God, if we don't, the world's going to fall apart. As he says, the world is going to move anyway. The world's going to, if humanity doesn't get into that symbiotic relationship that Rev Z is talking about, then, all it takes is one good shake from Mother Earth and we will all fly off, like fleas, like a dog shaking.
Yes.
We'll be gone. Humanity will be gone, but the planet will be just fine. Right? Go to any empty parking lot in your city, and you'll see that the grass has broken the asphalt and the concrete and has begun to come in again. The earth will take care of itself. We need to be in a symbiotic relationship with that thing, which is a system of enoughness, of wholeness, of enfranchisement and justice. And so specifically, that means that we get up off not only to do things like coat drives or food drives, but it means, standing up and saying what needs to be said when it comes to, things like Black Lives Matter or women's rights or whoever is on the margins being oppressed. We need to look at those things too and not be afraid to say those things in our churches and from our pulpits.
Yeah.
And, just real quick on that, we're going to have a great opportunity where we talk about enough food and housing and things like that and justice. When we step out of this current environment that we're in, and everybody's mindset is going to switch, whether you wanted it to or not.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be some vacant buildings and jobs and other kind of opportunities that's going to need to be rethought in how we apply them, how we utilize them. And so it's going to create this wonderful opportunity for us to really dive into these statements and make them live and create the opportunity to create this thing with not a whole lot of effort. Actually, it just requires some personal responsibility and some due diligence and some joy, as you were saying. And I think, we're gonna surprise ourselves there.
And creativity, I think I don't remember if it was Holmes or Eric Butterworth who says, never was there a cosmic famine.
Yes.
So it's the creativity. It's like there's no lack of ideas that we can bring into form. That right now there's enough food, there's enough water, there's enough resources on the planet to take care of everything and everyone right now, to take care of our veterans, to honor our police officers, to honor Black lives. There's enough of all of that. What is stopping in every one of those areas are the ideas, the thoughts of not enoughness, the thought, we can't do that because it's political. Oh, we can't do that because the borders and we can't ship the food over here or whatever. And all of these things are thought forms created by man, anchored in separation. And the moment we have a new thought about any of those things, then spirit will move and the resources of enoughness will manifest themselves.
So it is.
So it is. My understanding now, and remember, folks, we all understand that 85% of statistics are made up on the spot simply to prove the point of the person that's speaking. So there is a wealth of housing in the United States. And by the last calculations I looked at, there's more available empty housing than there are people living on the streets.
Yeah.
Why do we have a housing problem in this country when it is clear there's more than enough? Again, we're going to come back to that. And to the creativity piece, right? I do see it here in Denver. Very early on in the pandemic, there's a motel that was under redevelopment. They weren't sure what they were going to do with it. There were zoning issues. There were all kinds of problems. Somebody came up with a great idea. A nonprofit got a hold of it. They turned it into transitional housing, and they got a whole bunch of people that were living off the streets, and into shelter, into a place where they could feel safe and be safe, not only from the virus, but from living on the streets.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
This is a small nonprofit, again here in the Denver area. But this can be happening and is happening, and I believe ought to be happening a lot more in cities all across our country. But the only way that's going to happen is for people like us, people that feel that call, that feel that tug to say, I want to be a part of the solution.
And just real quick, you made me think about something that Reverend Dave was talking about it before we started. Taking that model, right? We know education is going to shift, right? And so part of the problem is, educating people who are living in one condition to be adjusted and ready for the next condition. So here is Dr. David's, project for someone, all of us, whoever has that joy to do this, to create a program that we're taking. We've got all these buildings that's empty or coming empty, figure out for zone all the nuances of it so that people who are in transition can come in, they can get some education, whether it's living a new lifestyle, whether it's to get a trade, to get a job, whatever that might be, for those people that as David said so eloquently, that we consider disenfranchised, and we want to enfranchise them to come in and help sustain this global model of symbioticness and create a life that works for everyone. I mean, the opportunities are there forever for us to go to work.
Yeah. Amen. Yes. Hey, folks, you're listening to the New Thought Media Network. This is New Thought Today, every Tuesday at 2 p.m. here on New Thought Media Network. Rev Z and I get together, and we're looking at the global vision and how we actualize that in our lives, how we bring that forward in our lives. And are these statements still even really applicable to our lives? And today we have the great Reverend Dr. David Alexander with us. And knowing that we don't get this chance very often, we decided to throw 3 of the principles at him all on the same day. This has been a rousing and great conversation so far. And we've got probably just enough time to dig into this final point for the day. We envision a world in which resources are valued, cared for, and grown, and where there is generous and continuous sharing of these resources. Dr. David, this was the topic Z and I discussed last week, and I think one of the things we really danced on for quite a while is that word grown. It brings forth that organicness, but it reminds us, right? We don't grow a plastic thing. There's so much to it. So and to me, it always spoke to kind of getting away from the consumerism and a little bit back more towards the natural experience of life. But we would love to hear your perceptions and concepts on this one.
Yeah, well, I think that's certainly a valuable take on it, and I think grown also speaks to cultivate, right? To grow our resources of our young people, as Rev Z was just talking about in education, or whoever might be disenfranchised right now, to grow them as potential contributors to a world that works for everyone. How do we cultivate and grow those resources? How do we really care for our veterans when they come home in job skills and training and redevelopment and handling their PTSD? How do we care and grow the resource of young people instead of putting everybody down the pipeline of higher education, which is getting higher and higher in terms of cost, with a very low rate of return on investment in terms of jobs that people are able to get for insurmountable debt that they receive from getting that bachelor's degree. Put them make state trade schools and 2-year colleges free, and let's funnel people into that, because we need more people in the workforce. I mean, I've got several degrees, honorary and received, and I had some college debt from that place right there, University of New Mexico. Go Lobos! And I'm was grateful that I got out of the system in enough time. I graduated 20 years ago from college. I've been able to pay off all my student loans, but the system's only gotten much worse since I was in it. But you know what? Every time something breaks in my house, every time something goes wrong with the car, I got to call people who have the trade skills to do that stuff. So I might have a quote unquote higher education, but there are lots of skills that that I don't have. And we need people with those skills in our workforce and in our communities to do those things. So I think there's lots of ways we could look at, valuing, caring, and growing and sharing those resources. Again, that, sharing is, why is the sharing important? Because it's important to break down the paradigm of individualism, what I call toxic individualism. You need some sense of healthy individualism when you're developing, right, from infant to toddler to child and so on. You have to self-differentiate from the world and say, this is me. But at some point, that arc has to come back, and you have to rejoin the community. And you have to learn the value of sharing and being connected to something bigger, because you're not here alone. You're not here to do this all on your own. And we have, particularly in the Western world and American collective consciousness, we have, I should say, the United States of America, we have a toxic sense of rugged individualism that holds me and mine and my political territory, and so we create, charter school programs, and we call it parents' choice, and we put money into that. But then really there's only a certain group of people that actually get to make a choice. It's not a choice for everybody. And those who don't get to make that choice are stuck in the public schools that then don't have the resources. And meanwhile, our rhetoric about it is, well, parents should be able to choose. Well, which parents are we talking about? Are we talking about everyone? Right? And there's really a scarcity mentality that is not about sharing resources. That is the motivation behind those kinds of policies. So we need to, when we break down rugged individualism, you see the normal approach to that topic would be a political one. People probably hearing it, even in my speech right now about it, hearing that I'm maybe being critical of conservatives or the current head of the Department of Education, which, thanks be to God, won't be employed in that position very much longer. And we could have a political conversation about it and talk about us and them. But what I really want to do is have a consciousness conversation about it and say, what is, regardless of who's in charge at any particular point in time, what are the current policies, and what is the consciousness behind them? And does that consciousness work for everyone? I don't care if it has an R or a D next to it. The question is, does it work for everyone? That's a much different, and a lot of times we can't have that conversation because we get so charged, we get so polarized. We need to keep in check our capacity of getting charged and have the conversation about consciousness, because that's what's driving everything. I apologize, I got a little soapbox there, but
no. And one thing that Robert and I like to do is we, as we've been doing so far, but I think you highlighted in my mind a great opportunity again to share practical approaches that someone can find themselves in and do. You were talking, when I was in high school, Reverend Robert and I talked about this before. When I was in high school, the school worked closely with the VOTEC schools and the junior college, and you could set it up where when you graduated with your diploma, you could also have a certain number of hours towards plumbing or electrician. I personally took commercial cooking and baking. So when I graduated from high school with my high school diploma, I also had a 540-hour certificate of commercial cooking and baking. And so it creates this opportunity that's easy again, where this stuff easily works together. We've lost some of that creativity, Dr. David, as you said earlier, and figuring out how to utilize stuff that we already got.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
In many ways, and this comes from my admittedly white privileged upbringing and background, the concept of sharing was vilified. You don't share transport unless you're poor. You don't ride the bus unless you're poor. You don't carpool unless you can't afford your own. We weren't taught that we should be sharing the resources.
Mm-hmm.
We were taught, so and I know this transcends in so many across so many categories. We're taught much of this as well, but it was get mine. It was that selfishness of, hey, you take care of you and yours, and everybody else is on their own. And sharing of resources or experiences was highly looked down upon.
Mm-hmm.
It meant you weren't successful if you had to share a ride or a bus or a meal or a house and had to have a housemate. No, the goal is to be completely encapsulated in your own little world.
Yeah, and yeah, and I think that's the case for all of us that grew up white identified. So we have some version of that going on in our
Right.
collective society, and perhaps even in our own homes. And so this becomes the thing that is literally the white elephant in the room
Yes.
that New Thought has to confront, because everything that you just said, there are a lot of people in our pews that actually call those things personal values, and they're personal values that actually they find a connection and attraction to our theology because they believe this myth, and I'll call it that, a myth of pulling yourself up by your own bootstraps. If it is to be, it's up to me. All that self-empowerment stuff of, again, and we started the conversation there, right? Personal responsibility. So that personal responsibility part of our theology really jives well with the political conservative who says, don't share resources. It's all about, you go get yours, earn it, and make it yourself, et cetera, et cetera. There is a marriage there, so to speak. But when we really examine, again, not about attacking somebody's political ideology, but let's look at the consciousness behind that. And where is the consciousness anchored? It's not anchored in oneness. It's anchored in separation. It's anchored in the sense of individualism. It says, I am separate from you. And I have to protect me and mine because you might come and get it from me.
Yeah.
That is a predominantly white consciousness construct of selfishness and separation that me just doesn't work with our theology. It looks like on the surface it works because of that self-empowerment thing, but it really doesn't jive with our sense of oneness. So if we're going to go about this work, we're going to have to examine that elephant in the room. And there's a whole myth, and I bought into it. This myth of rugged individualism, this idea that you can, in fact, do it all yourself.
Yeah.
None of us, not anybody on this panel, not anybody watching, none of us are self-made people. We all had mentors, teachers, parents, guides, ministers, etc., professors, people along the way that took us by the hand, took us under their wing, showed us their skills, their trade, their insights, their love, their compassion. We are made by the community that we live in. None of us are self-made anythings. None of us.
Yes.
Somebody fed us when we were hungry. And if they didn't feed us, we would have died. So none of us are self-made anything, but that myth lives in the white American ideology, but it also lives in the self-help ideology within New Thought. And we have to exercise that demon. We have to get that out. It doesn't belong. It is interfering with the greater concept of oneness.
Well, and just to do the flip side of that coin, in the African American community, it was just the opposite. Everybody shared.
Right.
If I had it, you had it. Everybody understood that it took a whole village to raise a child. There was nothing that you could do by yourself because there's too much integralness of it. And so that's a PowerPoint, if you will, for the Black and that happens also in most people of color, that shared value. even if you step out in the world, which sometimes could be a burden, you represent the whole community. Now that's been used in a very negative way, right? Because if something bad happens, they bam that thing in the ground. But the idea of that
is what my wife says. Don't be an embarrassment to the family.
Exactly. and so it's again, it's the reconciling the opposites, because even in that model, you still have to have, as you said, those people who stand up enough to be the role models and to be the mentors, which takes some self-determination backed up by all that support, right? But it's this integral life that we have to get to now, or else, we're going to repeat the same thing. If you don't pay attention, you're going to do the same thing again.
Right.
Exactly. Hoo-wee, baby. This is fun. It feels like we could go for another 2 or 3 hours here, folks, but we know that we're not going to. We're rapidly approaching the end of our allotted time frame here, so I just wanted to break in and say thank you to everyone for paying attention, watching the New Thought Media Network, being a part of this mighty ministry that's evolving and growing. Our mission here is to bring you positive music, media, and entertainment, and discussions such as this. So this is New Thought Today. It happens every Tuesday at 2 p.m. And today, Reverend Dr. David Alexander has been joining us and really digging in deep on how do we create this world that works for everyone based on these principles that we're looking at and the things that and the way we've laid it all out here. So, gentlemen, we've probably got just about enough time for some closing parting thoughts, and then and Dr. David, along the way, we do want to hear a bit about what's up in the future for you. How do we stay in touch with you? Where do we connect with you? How can people engage more with you and your ministry and the work you're doing to create a world that works for everyone?
Great. You want me to do that now?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. I wasn't sure what the order was. So you can just follow me through the church's website, slca.com, Spiritual Living Center of Atlanta. Follow us on Facebook, and we're posting and doing things all the time. Some of the things that we are up to in envisioning, re-envisioning, like everybody is, what spiritual community means. We have members all over the United States that are joining us because they find the tenor of our message and the vibration of what we're putting out speaks to them. So don't be put off by the Atlanta part of Spiritual Living Center of Atlanta. Atlanta, really, it's a great name because it is an idea, and it's an idea that was reborn after being burned to the ground during the Civil War. It's an idea, a place that gave birth to the Civil Rights Movement. So it is a place that has a global ethic and mindset to it. So we really welcome people from all over. And some of the things that we have coming up for us is I'm working with a team right now of taking the 12 steps and rewriting them in relationship to dealing with our consciousness of whiteness. So writing 12 steps of recovery from white conditioning. There was a body in Minnesota that has already done that work by that title, and we're reworking and rewording some of the steps, and we're writing a whole workbook so that people can self-pace themselves and guide themselves through each of those steps to take a 12-step approach to healing race relations and the consciousness in this part of the world, healing from white conditioning, because that is at the center. We touched on it a little bit today, but it really is at the center of every problem we face. Whiteness is a social construct. It's made up, and it's not doing us any good. So we need to reclaim our authentic selves. Those of us who are white identified, we need to reclaim our whole self. And just as people of color claim their authentic expression and their authentic selves, so that we can create a world that works together. So we're putting some real meat on the bones to that work, so that people can not just read a book about anti-racism, but actually really dive in and take personal responsibility for being about that work. And so I would just ask that if that appeals to you, to follow us on Facebook, support that ministry. What I would say is if you're attracted at all to the things that I've said, and it's not necessarily about me personally, but being a minister or a New Thought minister in particular that has a prophetic to their message, we pay a price for that. Right? Conservatives leave our church. Sometimes people with big pocketbooks leave our church. People try to punish us by saying, well, I don't want you talking about political things, so I'm going to take my tithes and go elsewhere. And meanwhile, we have ministers who will never say anything political because they're afraid that half the congregation might leave. So what I would say to that is if you're attracted to the sort of boldness of the way of which I've spoken about some of these things today, then show it. Support prophetic voices. Show us that we won't go poor by telling the truth. That we can't thrive because people will put money into and resources into those places. It's really important. I think that's, whether it's me or somebody else. Don't just applaud them on the sidelines, but really get in there and support them and let them know that you care, that they're sticking their neck out.
Yeah, thank you. And that's exactly why we wanted to have you on this program, Dr. David. You are one of those prophetic voices across New Thought. And from my perspective, you have been since the day I first learned your name. So I appreciate it.
Rebel, always a heretic.
Yes, New Thought Media Network, folks. We might sometimes seem like the land of misfit toys, but it's always, the misfits are the real fits, in my opinion. So, beautiful. Thank you for being here, Rev Z. Final thoughts before we wrap this up today.
Yeah, David just gave me a new word for my closing affirmation, which is educate, conversate, and activate. If we do that, all else will take care of itself. So, that's my stand, and I'm sticking to it.
All right, there we go. Even our catchphrases are evolving around here, folks. So thank you for being with us. And it would not be a program if we didn't say thank you again to New Thought Media Network for all the work that goes into making this happen, and for all of you that are supporting New Thought Media Network with your gifts, your tithes, your offerings, and your dollars. Thank you so very much for that. It goes a long, long way to making sure that we can continue to bring you this programming, continue well into 2021, bringing these prophetic voices and all the voices of New Thought straight into your living room or onto your device. So thanks for being with us. Dr. David, again, thank you so much for being here today.
My great pleasure. Thank you.
Until next time, dear ones, peace and blessings.
Bye.